Hi, Terry Laxton. Welcome back to video number 2. What we want to go through today are a lot of the myths around retirement planning. But before we do that, I want to thank those people who took the time to put comments at the bottom of the last video. I appreciate your feedback and your questions, and I'll make every effort to answer all of them. As I said, what we're going to talk about are myths to retirement planning, overcoming the top challenges to this. But before we do, let's review what my clients are looking for. They're looking for control over their future. Quite frankly, most people don't feel they have control over taxes or the market. And I think those are justifiable concerns. They want a retirement plan that lets them sleep at night. This relates directly to this. They don't feel they have any control. They don't know what's going to happen next. This keeps them awake at night. They want to eliminate the risk of running out of money. They want to maximize their retirement income. And they want to minimize future taxes. This is the core of what the Better Money Method is about. So let's talk about these myths. There just isn't a plan out there that will produce over 2 or 3%. Well, that's a legitimate concern right now because over the last 15 years, the S&P, as I said, has returned just under 2%, not even keeping up with inflation. But my clients with the Better Money Method have earned between 6 and 8% during the same period of time. That's 3 to 4 times as much money over the last 15 years. So there are ways to get a better rate of return without taking risk. Myth number 2, over time, Wall Street averages 8%. Well, that's true, but let me show you something about myths. So when we're talking about Wall Street averages, I usually ask people if I could show you a mutual fund that earned 13.3% over the last 3 years, would you be interested? Quite often I get people enthusiastically saying yes. At that point I say, let me show you how Wall Street calculates averages. Let's say you have a mutual fund, the ABC Mutual Fund, and you put $100 in the first year. That goes up 100%. Now what have you got? You've got $200. Okay? The next year that goes down 50%. Now what have you got? $100 again. With me so far? The next year that goes down 10%. Now what have you got? $90. So you started with 100, you end up that 3 years with $90. But here's where the fly in the ointment is. How do you calculate averages? You calculate averages by taking all your rates of return and dividing them by the number of years. So 100 less 50 less 10 is 40%. We got 3 years, 40% divided by 3 equals 13.3%. So what that means is, as a registered investment advisor, I can legally say to you, I'm advocating you buy the ABC Mutual Fund because you know the market's been down for the last 2 years, but in spite of that fact, this fund has averaged 13.3% over the last 3 years. But in reality, you put $100 in and you got 90 back. This is how Wall Street calculates averages. This is how Susie Orman, Dave Ramsey, all the talking heads calculate averages. I don't know about you, I don't put averages in my retirement plan. I put dollars in. Myth number 3, taxes will be lower in the future. So it's better to get a deduction now because taxes will be lower in retirement. That's another Wall Street myth. And in the 80s and 90s, it might have been true, but not with what I call the new normal, which I'll talk about more later. Let me put this into perspective for you. In 2013, the federal government came out and they said the national debt was roughly $50,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. Well, that's an astronomical number. But that's not the whole story. And this may shock you, but Uncle Sam plays by different rules than they let us play by. And let me tell you what I mean by that. If you own a business, you buy a piece of equipment, it's going to be delivered in 90 days. You are obligated to put that on your books right now as a liability. But Uncle Sam is not. Uncle Sam doesn't tell you about these things until he pays for them. So that $50,000 for every man, woman, and child doesn't include things like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, interest on the national debt, etc. When you add all of those in, you find that the national debt, and this is in 2013, was $195,000 for every man, woman, and child in this country. Once you understand that, you will understand that the only way taxes will be lower in your retirement is if you're broke. And I don't think that's a good retirement plan. The fourth myth is a lot of people tell me, I don't have the time to worry about my portfolio. I don't have the time to rebalance it all the time. So I'm just going to buy and hold because over a long period of time, I'll make the money back. And this is one of my pet peeves with Wall Street. They have all these phrases. It's a long-term investment. You've seen this before. You have time to recover, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But let me show you the reality of this philosophy. As everybody realizes, I believe, the market goes like this over a period of time, right? Well, if this was 2000 and this is 2001 and you lost $50,000 in your 401k, yes, you recovered in 2007 because remember 2008 you lost it again. But if you got $50,000 back in 2007, it isn't this $50,000, it's a new $50,000. What if you just said, I'm not going to play this game anymore. I'm not going to listen to Wall Street anymore. What if you took that money and if you were 45 years old and invested it in the better money method and you could earn 6%, which if you'll recall is the low end of what I said my clients earned over the last 15 years while the market was earning less than 2. What you would find is in 10 years, that would be worth $91,000 in round numbers. In 20 years, that would be worth $165,000 in round numbers. In 25 years, remember this guy's 45, I assume 70 is going to become the new retirement age. In 25 years, that would be worth $225,000. So you didn't lose $50,000 in 2001. You lost $225,000 that could have been in your retirement plan. If you're buying the Wall Street buy and hold philosophy, and if you do this 2, 3, 4 times over your working career, what you've actually done is given up $500,000, $750,000, maybe even $1 million that could have been in your retirement plan. Myth number 5, I have to accept risk to get a high reward. So the truth is, indexing outperforms the market. And people have known this literally from the early 1920s. Because what happened was by the early 1920s, the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 had been around long enough, people could do this study. And what they found is if you mirrored those indexes, rather than actually invested in the market, you got a higher rate of return. That was almost 100 years ago. But what do we hear all the time? This is complicated. You have to have somebody that's an expert at it. You have to have somebody that does this every day. You have to listen to Wall Street. You have to have a financial planner. Well, the simple reality is you don't. You could invest in indexing. And indexing is a concept that just mirrors the performance of the market. And people are starting to understand this because in 1994, the amount of money invested in index mutual funds was $1 billion. By 2014, that number had grown to over $56 billion. So people are starting to grasp this concept. And that's at the core of the better money method. The better money method uses indexing, but uses it in a way you've never seen that outperforms the indexes in the market. It takes indexing and raises it to a whole new level. Myth number 6, fees don't really matter. They don't have much of an impact on my portfolio. Well, as I told you before, averages can be deceptive, and this is another thing that can be deceptive. Because if you are investing, let's say in a 401k over a 30-year period, a 2% fee will consume 50% of your money. So the bottom line is, the truth is, you're going to pay fees no matter where you put your money. But you need to do the research. You need to understand where you can get the lowest fees, where they'll have the least impact on your retirement planning. Myth number 7, I won't live past 85. Nobody in my family has. I'm not worried about it. Well, as I said before, baby boomers are the first generation in history to look at spending 25 or 30 years in retirement. So you better plan for it, because statistics show that a couple age 65, one of them has a 50% chance of getting to 92 and a 25% chance of getting to 94. So you don't want to run out of money. And to make that point even clearer, the fastest growing segment of our society right now is the group of people over 100. Over the last 15 years, that population has increased by 40%, and 80% of those are women. So you need to plan your retirement with the idea you may live longer than you think you're going to. Myth number 8, low interest rates are the new normal. I just have to live with it. Well, two things. As I told you, the better money method will outperform the market by 200, 300, 400%. Over the last 15 years, it has outperformed the market between 300 and 400% cumulative. So you don't have to accept low interest rates in order to get a decent rate of return. And I see people doing some very ridiculous things. I had a gentleman in my office a while back. He was bothered by these low interest rates. So he decided the solution to his problem was to invest in junk bonds. He went to one of these do-it-yourself investment houses. He came up with this concept. He would diversify into several junk bonds. Well, so far he's lost 25% of his money. Now he's doing what most people do. He's frozen in place. He's afraid to move his money. He thinks maybe some of these companies will come back. And on the other side of the coin, he's afraid he's going to lose more money. So I've seen people do ridiculous things to up their rate of return. So if you're thinking about maybe taking a new look at things, getting a new perspective, I recommend you read my book. You can download today a worksheet that reviews how Wall Street calculates interest. I think you need to walk through this a second time. I've had people in seminars come back to me the next day and say, show me that again. So you work through that exercise again, you'll have a better understanding of the better money method. In the next video, we're going to go over case studies. We're going to show you how these connect to your homework steps you've already done, and how you can look at implementing a better money method for yourself if you're so inclined.